Welcome. I want to talk this morning about a concept called breakdowns. Now, breakdowns is a bit of a funny word, but bear with me because it can make an incredible difference to how you go about your work and how do you go about the things that don't go the way you expect them to. Before we start, what moods or emotions would you say you're in? So just take 30 seconds and reflect for yourself. What moods or emotions are you in? Okay. Well, Bob Dylan noticed that the times they were changing about 58 years ago. But he's not the first person to notice that the times are changing. Schopenhauer in the 1800s said something like, "Change alone is eternal, perpetual, immortal." And if you go back before him, in the ancient Greeks, Heraclitus is recorded as saying, "There is nothing permanent except change." So while it's pretty indisputable that we're living in a time of quite unprecedented change, this idea that change is happening is old. I invite you to take a moment to pause the video, in fact, and reflect on your experience about change at work. And in your life, really. So just think about what are one or two really important changes you've noticed in the last 5 years, and a couple of important changes you expect to impact you in the next few years. So just pause the video now. Okay, welcome back. If there's a set of comments below, you can type in the changes you've noticed. And if you're just watching this video alone, this is for your reflection. So how change touches our emotions may give us a lot of the experience of it. Whether it's disruptive or a minor irritation, it's as much about our response, our emotions, as it is about what the change is itself. And I want to introduce you to this term, breakdowns. The term breakdowns is not an everyday term. We use it in common language, but I may not be using it in the way that you think about it. So again, a little bit of reflection. Think about the way you use the term breakdowns or you hear it commonly. So what comes to mind for me are things like the car breaks down. I might break down work into chunks. People talk about emotional breakdowns, breakdown in a relationship, this sort of area. And these are common uses of the word that many of them will fit what I'm using. But this is a bit of an unusual term for things that happen unexpectedly that we're not prepared for. This change of expectations. And if you think about it, everyday life is often about dealing with these interruptions and changes to the flow of what we expect. So just see if this is a typical day for you. Wake up feeling refreshed and you bound out of bed. You might do some exercise or have a very nice time with your partner over breakfast. If you've got kids, they get themselves ready for school. Or otherwise, they're just waiting for you and they're waiting at the door. They're already trying to put their shoes on or they've put them on and they're ready to go. You have a good commute. Traffic flows well. Nothing really gets in the way, whether it's a drive or you're on public transport. You arrive at work and, of course, you've already prepared the day before what you're going to be doing. Got a plan, you've thought about it carefully, and everything goes to plan. You move through your day as you'd expect. You go home, you have a lovely meal that you've pre-prepared in some way. You have some meaningful or the kind of conversation you would want to have with your friend or your partner. You do some exercise, you go to bed at the time that's just right for you. And that's how life goes. It's pretty much, you've got it planned out. You know what you'll be doing in 5 years. Is that how your life is? Probably not, eh? There's disruptions, interruptions, things go wrong, people come and see us, the phone rings. We have expectations and anticipations of the future. We've got to think how it's going to go, but circumstances often interrupt that. They disrupt that, and our anticipations don't turn out. And that's what we're calling a breakdown. It's an interruption to the normally invisible flow of living. But the breakdown, in a sense, is not just the circumstance itself. The breakdown is in us, and it's all about our assessments of the situation, our experience of the situation, and our sense of what the situation means for our future. A breakdown is a shift in the assessment by a particular observer, a particular person, about what is and is not possible for them. It's about a change in what they expect for the future. So something happens. It changes our expectations, our assessments of the future. In other words, our assessments of what's possible and not possible for us. So I'll give you an example then. 3 people in an airport. If you're in Australia, you might be up in Brisbane on the Gold Coast, where people go for a holiday in the sun. The first person looks up and there's a weather report, and the weather report says there's an unexpected weather system moving in, and there's going to be cool weather with cold, gentle rain for the next 10 days. Quite unexpected. The first person who's looking is on their way home from having just had a lovely holiday. They've enjoyed the sun and the sand, and they barely notice it. They just go, oh, okay, it's going to be raining, and they go on with whatever they're doing. The second person has just arrived at the airport anticipating their 5 or 6 days sun and sand, and for them it's devastating. The holiday they've saved for the last 2 years is just not going to turn out as they thought. It's going to be cold and wet when they wanted warm and sun. So for them, the weather report represents a negative breakdown. But the third person who's watching is a local farmer, and she has a positive breakdown. For her, it means it's a complete disruption to her plans. She has to cancel what she needs to do to get home because she needs to plant some crops, because this is the perfect growing weather. 10 cool days of gentle rain is what she'd really been hoping for, but it was completely unexpected. So for her, a positive breakdown. 3 people, same circumstances. One, it means nothing. One, it's quite a devastating negative breakdown. And for the third, it's a positive breakdown of their expected future. So an integral part of living well and working well is managing these interruptions to the flow of life, of continuously dealing with the unexpected. You might notice, both at work and in family, we sometimes just put up with ongoing and predictable breakdowns. Sometimes you can hear people, maybe you do it yourself sometimes, we complain about the same thing over and over, but we don't deal with it. We don't put it on the table. So we might think about what are some everyday or some significant breakdowns you have related to work. For example, what have you been complaining about but have you done nothing to change? Or what are things that in the last few weeks have happened that were unexpected? Again, pause the video if you'd like, make some notes. What are some of these predictable, everyday, but sometimes bigger breakdowns that you could anticipate that they'd be happening? Okay, so we could say that even though these things are going to happen, what's going to really count is how we are in relationship to those things, or who we are in the face of these circumstances that sometimes slap us in the face with life. So for example, if you're driving to an important meeting, maybe it's a job interview for a job you really want, and there's a completely unexpected traffic jam and it's going to make you late. Do you arrive stressed or relaxed? Do you have a say in it? Do you have a say in whether you're going to arrive stressed or relaxed? Again, please stop the video and just reflect. If needed, have a conversation with a colleague. Okay. Next reflection question is, consider your roles as managers and leaders from the context of breakdowns. What do you see? Again, I invite you just to stop the video and have a think about this. Maybe, if you're watching with a colleague, have a conversation. Great, welcome back. I want to offer interpretations of leadership and management. and we'll use this with the context of breakdowns. So when we manage, in the role of a manager, our job is to anticipate likely breakdowns and to deal with the ones that do occur to keep delivering the status quo. So your job in the role of manager is to keep the current system running smoothly. And that would include anticipating things that are likely to change, putting in place systems and practices to deal with those ordinary, everyday interruptions and disruptions, everyday breakdowns, if you like. But when we're leading, as a leader, your job is to create breakdowns for people, because the job of the leader is to create something new, to bring about learning, to create change. A leader, a new future that wouldn't happen otherwise, and mobilizes people, changes what they were going to do to be able to deliver on that future. So thinking about this in your own world, just to take a moment, what's a breakdown you're dealing with, or you could be dealing with, a breakdown you need to declare? And what makes it a breakdown for you? Why is it that it impacts you so hard that you would call this a breakdown? Again, stop the video if that would be useful. And think about what actions you could now take. Because to deal with breakdowns, we can't just sit there and hope they change. We need to do things like make requests, make offers, declare new futures, engage in conversations. What are you going to do to deal with this breakdown? When breakdowns are hidden or not declared to those who care, in other words, there's no transparency, this is hidden to people, messes occur. So for example, if staff are in a mood of tiredness and management hasn't noticed, no one has declared the breakdown, you get high levels of sick leave and staff turnover. And that puts pressure on the remaining staff, and that perpetuates a cycle of tiredness, exhaustion, and overwork. Or another thing could be a project is running behind schedule, but only the participants know, and the people to whom they've promised the project don't know. So the participants or the leader of the project hasn't declared the breakdown. But when it finally becomes obvious, that's going to create, or likely to create, a whole breakdown for the person who was expecting them to deliver. So, what breakdowns do you need to declare, and to whom do you need to declare these breakdowns? Action and practice. Well, change doesn't happen. We don't do things differently without practicing. There's this concept of breakdowns, from thinking about leadership and management from the context of breakdowns and putting it into the other ontological and generative work we might have talked about the commitment cycle, making requests, making offers, gaining commitments, having conversations for clarity to get on the same page, having conversations to stay on the same page during the delivery cycle, and conversations for assessments or giving feedback, things that drive performance and are at the core of no surprises. What actions do you need to practice to develop your mastery in dealing with breakdowns and building a high-performing culture in which your people thrive?